Last week, in the immediate aftermath of the incursion by China's high-altitude balloon, our military, through the North American Aerospace Defense Command, so-called NORAD, closely scrutinized our airspace, including enhancing our radar to pick up more slow-moving objects above our country, around the world. In doing so, they tracked 3 unidentified objects, one in Alaska, Canada, and over Lake Huron in the Midwest. They acted in accordance with established parameters for determining how to deal with unidentified aerial objects in U.S. airspace. At their recommendation, I gave the order to take down these 3 objects due to hazards to civilian commercial air traffic and because we could not rule out the surveillance risk of sensitive facilities. We acted in consultation with the Canadian government. I spoke personally with Prime Minister Trudeau from Canada on Saturday. And just as critically, we acted out of an abundance of caution and an opportunity that allowed us to take down these objects safely. Our military and the Canadian military are seeking to recover the debris so we can learn more about these 3 objects. Our intelligence community is still assessing all 3 incidences. They're reporting to me daily and will continue their urgent efforts to do so, and I will communicate that to the Congress. We don't yet know exactly what these 3 objects were, but nothing right now suggests they were related to China's spy balloon program or that they were surveillance vehicles from any other country. The intelligence community's current assessment is that these 3 objects were most likely balloons tied to private companies, recreation or research institutions studying weather or conducting other scientific research. When I came into office, I instructed our intelligence community to take a broad look at the phenomenon of unidentified aerial objects. We know that a range of entities, including countries, companies, and research organizations, operate objects at altitudes for purposes that are not nefarious, including legitimate scientific research. I want to be clear. We don't have any evidence that there has been a sudden increase in the number of objects in the sky. We're now just seeing more of them, partially because the steps we've taken to increase our radars, to narrow our radars. And we have to keep adapting our approach to dealing with these challenges. That's why I've directed my team to come back to me with sharper rules for how we will deal with these unidentified objects moving forward, distinguishing between those that are likely to pose safety and security risks that necessitate action and those that do not. But make no mistake, if any object presents a threat to the safety and security of the American people, I will take it down. I'll be sharing with Congress these classified policy parameters when they're completed, and they'll remain classified so we don't give our roadmap to our enemies to try to evade our defenses. Going forward, these parameters will guide what actions we'll take while responding to unmanned and unidentified aerial objects. We're going to keep adapting them as the challenges evolve, if it evolves. In addition, I've directed my national security advisor to lead a government-wide effort to make sure we are positioned to deal safely and effectively with the objects in our airspace. First, we will establish a better inventory of unmanned airborne objects in space above the United States airspace and make sure that inventory is accessible and up to date. Second, we'll implement further measures to improve our capacity to detect unmanned objects in our airspace. Third, we'll update the rules and regulations for launching and maintaining unmanned objects in the skies above the United States of America. And fourth, my Secretary of State will lead an effort to help establish common global norms in this largely unregulated space. These steps will lead to safer and more secure skies for our air travelers, our military, our scientists, and for people on the ground as well. That's my job as your President, Commander-in-Chief. As the events of the previous days have shown, we'll always act to protect the interest of the American people and the security of the American people. Since I came to office, we've developed the ability to identify, track, and study high-altitude surveillance balloons connected with the Chinese military. When one of these high-altitude surveillance balloons entered our airspace over the continental United States earlier in the month, I gave the order to shoot it down. as soon as it would be safe to do so. The military advised against shooting it down over land because of the sheer size of it. It was the size of multiple school buses and it posed a risk to people on the ground if it was shot down where people lived. Instead, we tracked it closely, we analyzed its capabilities, and we learned more about how it operates. And because we knew its path, we were able to protect sensitive sites against collection. We waited until it was safely over water, which would not only protect civilians, but also enable us to recover substantial components for further analytics. And then we shot it down, sending a clear message. The violation of our sovereignty is unacceptable. We'll act to protect our country, and we did. Now, this past Friday, we put restrictions on 6 firms that directly support the People's Republic Liberation Army, the People's Liberation Army Aerospace Program. That includes airships and balloons, denying them access to U.S. technology. We briefed our diplomatic partners and our allies around the world, and we know about China's program and where their balloons have flown. Some of them have also raised their concerns directly with China. Our exports have lifted components of the Chinese balloon's payload off the ocean floor. We're analyzing them as I speak, and what we learn will strengthen our capabilities. Now, we'll also continue to engage with China, as we have throughout the past 2 weeks. As I've said since the beginning of my administration, we seek competition, not conflict with China. We're not looking for a new Cold War, but I make no apologies, and we will compete. And we'll responsibly manage that competition so that it doesn't veer into conflict. This episode underscores the importance of maintaining open lines of communication between our diplomats and our military professionals. Our diplomats will be engaging further, and I will remain in communication with President Xi. I'm grateful for the work of the last several weeks of our intelligence, diplomatic, and military professionals who have proved once again to be the most capable in the world. And I want to thank you all. Now, look, the other thing I want to point out is that we are going to keep our allies and the Congress contemporaneously informed of all we know and all we learn. And I expect to be speaking with President Xi, and I hope we are going to get to the bottom of this. But I make no apologies for taking down that balloon. Thank you very much.
There's been criticism that you're still trying to compromise by your family's business relationships.
Sir, Mr. President, there has
Give me
been
a break, man.
Did you overreact?
Mr. President, there's been criticism that this was an overreaction that was done because of political pressure.
You can come to my office and ask the question when you have more polite people.
Mr. President, why have you chosen Poland for your trip tomorrow?
President Biden there speaking from the South Court Auditorium at the White House. Appears to, I was just listening a little bit longer to see if he would answer some of those reporter questions, but the reporters were, at times it was difficult to hear what exactly they were asking, so the president didn't answer and he walked away. But President Biden there giving an update on the situation revolving those objects that were shot out of the sky over the U.S. and Canada. Of some of the key things that he noted there, he said that we don't yet know exactly what those 3 recent objects were, but nothing to suggest that they were related to the Chinese spy balloon program and could be private research-related objects. Again, those were the ones over the course of just last week. There were 3 different objects shot out of the sky within 3 days. I believe we do have a map to kind of lay that out. One of them was in Alaska, another one in the Yukon area of Canada, and another one over Lake Huron in the Great Lakes area. Of course, all of this started, the activity, when that Chinese surveillance balloon, the very large one, entered U.S. airspace. That was back on February 4th when they started recovering the debris when that object was shot out of the sky. Let's go ahead and bring in our correspondents here. We do have our senior White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, standing by at the White House. But first, let's go to our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, with more on kind of what this means for intelligence and national security. And Martha, the president did lay out some of his plans for those new parameters and how to address these flying objects in the future.
And it's going to be very tough, Whit. He said, I will take down any threat, any object that is a threat. I will take it down. At the same time, saying the last 3 objects pose no real threat, and that they were probably recreational or weather balloons, something we've been reporting on for a while here. So how you recalibrate, how you look at that. Is it a threat to civil aviation, which is the reason they said they took down these 3 objects, or is it some sort of national security threat, which certainly they would try to take a Chinese spy balloon if they thought it was a national security threat. But I think this is a very tall order. Think about this, Whit. There are about 184 weather balloons launched every single day in the United States, and globally, thousands. And those are just weather balloons. So how do you track those slow-moving objects while they're trying to recalibrate and catch something like the Chinese spy balloon, but not a weather balloon, and shoot that down with?
Yeah, we heard earlier in the week from Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin they were actually recalibrating the radars and changing the aperture so they could get a better look at some of these objects that don't move at high rates of speed. So, Martha, thank you so much. Let's bring in Mary Bruce now, because President Biden, we know, was under increasing political pressure from both sides of the aisle to do something about this. First, there were calls from Republicans for him to shoot down that Chinese spy balloon much sooner, and then the White House made the argument that they needed to wait for safety. What does this do now in terms of the political environment? Because he still said that they're looking at ways to establish new parameters, but no new guidelines yet for the people to digest.
Well, just the fact that we are hearing from the president today is a sign that he is trying to address some of this criticism, because he had faced growing calls from both sides of the political aisle just to come out and explain what is simply going on in the skies and his administration's actions to date. It was striking that the president did push back, I think, against the criticism that it may have been an overreaction to shoot down those other 3 additional objects over the weekend, especially given that his administration has now said that so far they appear to be benign. But you heard the president really stressing here, pushing back against that this wasn't an overreaction, but that they were trying to do this out of an abundance of caution. He said that there was a hazard to air traffic, noting that they simply couldn't rule out any additional risk. So the president is playing defense while also, of course, admitting that they do have to make some very real changes here, because as Martha noted, you simply have to somehow find that balance between obviously going after and identifying any kind of object or balloon that may be surveying and doing surveillance by a foreign government, but also you can't simply go around and shooting out every single weather surveillance or research object that may be in the skies, and that is a very tall order. But the president today clearly wanting to come out and show that he is in command of this situation, taking it very seriously.
And again, still a lot we don't know. The origin of those 3 recent objects that were shot down, and still a lot we don't know about that Chinese spy balloon, its capabilities, the purpose, and the motive for sending that over to the United States to begin with, and whether or not it was intentional. So we'll continue to follow that. Mary Bruce, Martha Raddatz, thank you so much. Our coverage will continue on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. You can also get breaking news alerts on the ABC News app. I'll be right back here with the entire team for a full wrap-up on World News Tonight. For now, I'm Wade Johnson in New York. Have a great day.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.